Imagine moving into what was supposed to be your peaceful suburban dream, only to discover the neighborhood was ruled by a petty dictator named Todd, the HOA president, who fined people for breathing wrong, ignored every rule himself, and used the association's money like it was his personal credit card. And when he came after me, that's when I decided I wasn't just going to stop him. I was going to erase his little kingdom legally, surgically, and permanently. When I first moved into my quiet suburban neighborhood, I imagined weekends filled with barbecues, friendly waves from neighbors, and a calm escape from the noise of the city. Instead, I walked straight into a dictatorship, a petty regime controlled by one man, Todd, our HOA president. Todd wasn't just strict. He was the kind of man who worshipped control. He lived for rules, fines, and power. Just not when those rules applied to him. Within the first month, I learned 3 things. Todd loved issuing fines. Todd hated being questioned. Todd believed he was untouchable. My awakening to Todd's tyranny started with my fence. The very specific stain color that we were required to use, but, at the time, it wasn't available anywhere. Supply chain issues, backorders, the works. So, I picked the closest match, practically identical, or so I thought. 2 days later, I opened my mailbox and saw a bright yellow slip, the kind that makes your stomach drop. A $500 fine for unapproved fence color. I approached Todd calmly, hoping reason still had a place in this universe. "Hey," I explained, showing him my receipts. "The approved stain was unavailable. I used the closest possible match. Can we work something out?" He didn't even pretend to look at the paperwork. He didn't sigh. He didn't explain. He smirked, one of those smug, slow, satisfied smirks that makes your blood temperature rise 10 degrees. And he said, "Rules are rules." Then he turned around and walked away. No discussion, no empathy. Just a man thrilled by the chance to hurt someone because he could. And that's when something inside me clicked into place. This wasn't going to be solved with polite conversation. This wasn't just a disagreement. This was war, a quiet one, a strategic one. A war Todd would never even realize he was losing until it was already over. People like Todd only make one mistake, but they make it massively. They underestimate the quiet ones. A month later, I innocently volunteered for the HOA board. "Oh, yeah, I just want to get involved in the community," I told him, smiling like a golden retriever who'd never plotted anything in its life. He loved it. Todd thrived on sycophants and compliant newcomers. He welcomed me in with open arms, completely confident that he'd gained another pawn. For the next 2 years, I played the long game. I attended every meeting. Never raised my voice. Never challenged him. I just watched. And what I saw was worse than I imagined. Todd bullied board members into approving whatever he wanted. He scheduled votes when only his loyal friends could attend. He lost documents homeowners submitted. He buried anything he didn't like under piles of bureaucratic nonsense. The HOA wasn't a community organization. It was Todd's personal fiefdom. I took notes, detailed notes, because step 1 was simple, understand the enemy. Step 2, find his weakness, and it didn't take long. Todd bragged constantly about how he kept the HOA financially healthy, but something didn't add up. The annual HOA fees were ridiculously high for a neighborhood of our size. Yet the pool was closed half the summer. The landscaping looked abandoned. The common areas were deteriorating. Where was the money going? Whenever anyone asked to see the financials, Todd always had some excuse. I'm still organizing them. They're on my other laptop. The audit will be ready next quarter. You wouldn't understand the accounting details anyway. So, for the first time, I made a formal written request for the full financial record, something HOA rules required him to provide. He ignored me, then stalled, then pretended he never received anything. So I tried another method, conversations with neighbors, and they had stories. One neighbor said Todd used HOA funds to build a new patio at his house. Another noticed Todd's kids swimming in the community pool during its mysterious maintenance closure. A third whispered that Todd always hired the same contractor for repairs, a man with no reviews, no website, and no other clients. Piece by piece, a pattern formed, and I realized Todd wasn't just a bully. He was a thief. I filed a formal complaint with the board, forcing Todd to release the records. Cornered, he finally handed them over. It was like opening a drawer full of snakes. Invoices missing, payments mislabeled, expenses with no explanation. Thousands of dollars going to companies that didn't exist. And there it was, the smoking gun. Todd was funneling HOA money into his personal accounts. Even better, he and his contractor buddy were running a kickback scheme. Todd inflated repair fees, approved them himself, the contractor billed the HOA, and then funneled the difference back to Todd. It was embezzlement, fraud, corruption. And I had the receipts literal and metaphorical. I assembled everything into a report so airtight you could have launched it into space. Most HOA meetings are tiny, boring gatherings with maybe 5 people half asleep in folding chairs. But not this one. For weeks leading up to the meeting, I knocked on doors, shared just enough information to spark outrage, and encouraged people to attend. By the time the annual meeting arrived, the room was packed, standing room only. A crowd hungry for answers. Todd walked in like a king returning from triumph, completely unaware that his audience wasn't here to applaud, they were here for the execution. He started his usual monologue about the challenges of leadership and his sacrifices, and that's when I stood up, calm, steady, exactly the opposite of how I felt inside. Could you explain some discrepancies in the financial records? I asked. He froze for half a second, then he forced a laugh. I don't think this is the time or place. I cut him off. Actually, Todd, it's the perfect time. I handed out copies of my report. Page after page of evidence. People flipped through it, their expressions shifting from confusion to anger, to absolute fury. Voices rose, accusations flew. Todd tried shouting over everyone, but the room had turned on him. I motioned for silence. And then I said the words that ended his reign. I moved to remove Todd as HOA president. The vote wasn't even close. Todd was out, just like that. But I wasn't done. We brought in an independent auditor, the kind you hire when you need every stone overturned. The report confirmed everything. Over $50,000 embezzled. Tens of thousands more mismanaged kickback schemes, fraudulent invoices, missing funds, unauthorized expenditures. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a heist. We reported Todd to the police, filed a civil lawsuit against him, and uncovered enough evidence that they opened a criminal investigation. Todd ended up having to sell his house to pay restitution and legal fees. His contractor buddy? Blacklisted from ever working in the county again. Todd tried to join another HOA in the next town over, but someone Googled his name during the meeting. He didn't even make it past introductions. His reputation was gone, shattered beyond repair. With Todd gone, our neighborhood transformed almost instantly. The pool reopened and stayed open. The landscaping was revived. The HOA fees dropped. We built a transparent financial system, online access to records, and term limits. The dictatorship became a community. And every time I pass Todd's old house, now owned by a warm, friendly family, I feel the same quiet satisfaction, not pride, not revenge, just justice. Justice that was earned. Justice that was meticulous. Justice that Todd never saw coming. Some battles aren't won with arguments or shouting matches. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is simply letting the truth do what it does best. Expose everything, and people like Todd, they always think they're untouchable. Right up until the moment they aren't. If you enjoyed this story about satisfying, perfectly legal revenge, hit that like button. Subscribe for more real stories where justice is delivered with precision. And tell me in the comments, what's the most infuriating HOA experience you've ever heard of or lived through? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.